Okay, so today we are getting on to the uru, which is, as I mentioned the other day, similar to the shevu, as in it's an added letter in certain cases, but it's different because instead of going in second place, in the second position, like the second letter in the word, it is going before the word, like a prefix, and instead of always being a H like the shevu, it changes, which is maybe more difficult. The good thing is it's easier to remember the pronunciation compared to the shevu. Remember the list of pronunciations that we were looking with the shevu, how they change the sound of the word. The uru also changes the sound of the word, but you don't have to remember anything because it's just the sound of the new beginning of the word. You'll see in a minute. Okay, so here we have this chart. I think I will turn the brightness up a little bit because we are in a bit of a bright room at the moment. Okay, there we go. So the uru, it's the word in Irish, but we can also call it an eclipsis, which is, I suppose, the more linguistic term in English. And we are going to start reading this little information here below the chart. Uru changes the sound of a letter to that of a different letter. The new sound is written in front of the one it replaces or eclipses. Note that D, S, and T sometimes do not get uru when they come after an N. Also, the N prefix on a vowel only happens in certain cases. The dash is needed when confusion can occur. And they give an example here. n-athair, which has a dash, n-athair, means our father, but when it's written without a dash, or n-athair is a completely different word. It means snake, and it doesn't take an uru. So they sound very similar. Our father and our snake, obviously very different. So it is better to write it with the dash to avoid confusion in these kind of cases. Okay, so we're going to look at the list of urus and some examples and how they sound. So like the last chart we were looking at, we have the letter, how it would be written in Shankló, an example, the pronunciation, and the translation in English or Béarla. Okay, so let's start with the first one. N. N goes in front of a, like the example I've just mentioned, n-athair. So instead of saying n-athair, which is kind of a bit, I suppose it's kind of like the difference between a and an in English. It just makes it physically easier when you add in the uru. Instead of saying elephant, we say n-eilifint. So it's a similar kind of idea. n-athair, and R means our. Kind of similar sound to English as well, so it's a bit easy to remember. So gets an N dash. And then we have B, which gets an M in front of it. M-B. And the example here is mow. Mow. Now the original word is bow, which means cow. But when we use it here, in this case in the possessive, their cow, then it gets the uru, M. So it changes the pronunciation to M. So again, like I said, easier to remember than the shevu because you just change the pronunciation to the first letter, the uru. Mow, their cow. Next we have C, and C gets the uru G. So it's GC, here it is in Shankló. For example, gill, gill, gill. So this original word would be kill, which is church, but again in the possessive, gill, their church, gill. Then moving on to D, D takes the uru N, so it changes the sound to N. For example, n-on means in store. And we can see n-d-a-n changes, the D becomes completely silent, forgotten, and the sound is just n, in store. Then we have E, another vowel. So similar to the A, we get an N dash E. So of course the E, it doesn't become silent now because it's a vowel, but we just put the N in front of it as well. So for example, n-eilifint, which I suppose you can guess what that means, and it is their elephant, n-eilifint. Next we have bhf. Here it is in Shanklo, and here we have on will to, which is like, are you, well, a question, for example, on will to ag dul go dtí an siopa, are you going to the shop? On will to, so it has a W sound, will. I know it's very counterintuitive when you're learning Irish as a new language coming from English, and BHF sounding like a W is totally weird, but you'll get used to it. Then we have a G. G takes an N, just like D as well. So, for example, I think we've seen this word before. Graw means love, and ngrá means in love. Ngrá. So the G becomes completely silent, and we just say the N. ngrá, in love, ngrá. Next we have another vowel, I. So again, like the other vowels, it takes N in front. For example, nih-heh, to eat. Then the next vowel again takes an N, N-O. For example, nole, to drink. Then we have P, and this takes a B. I think we saw this when we were looking at directions or places in one of the previous classes. So for example, a bawrk. The original word is pawrk, which means park. So a bawrk, their park. The possessive makes it add an and it changes the sound to B. And next, we're nearly done. T gets a D. For example, on dig lat. The original word was tig, but we say on dig lat, which is can you. And then we have another vowel finally, the last one, U, and this takes an N. For example, a nole. The original word was ool, which is apple. A nole is their apple. So here they are. But I'll write out all of the pronunciation for these words as well. We are going to move on to one more chart, which has other changes that we have at the beginning of the word. And again, these are easier than the shevu because there's nothing to remember. You just say the new letter at the start of the word. And in fact, these ones that we're looking at are almost all vowels. So again, it's even easier. You don't have to leave any letters silent. You just say the new letter at the beginning. Okay, so most of these are possessive again. So let's look at this example. H-A, for example, in a haig, which means her face. A haig. Then H-E, a elephant, which means her elephant. So that's how you know the difference between whether we're talking about her elephant or their elephant, because theirs is a nell-iphint and hers is a elephant. But we'll get on to more about that in another class about possession. Then I also takes a H. For example, let him with butter. Lehim. The original word is im, butter, lehim, with butter. O also takes a H. For example, le-hukris. Le-hukris. Ukris is the original word, which means hunger. Le-hukris, with hunger. Then U also takes a H as well. And we have ool again, which is apple. So ahul, her apple. Ahul, her apple. Ahul. Then moving away from possession, just talking about well, just nominative nouns. Well, for example, a takes a T sometimes. For example, on-tear. On-tear. Air is the original word, which of course means air. And on-tear, the air. On-tear. Then E takes a T in examples such as on-tailif, on-tailif, which means the request. On-tailif. This is this word here. We have another T when we have I. For example, on-tiisk. On-tiisk. Isk is fish. On-tiisk, the fish. Ukris, again, hunger. On-tukris, the hunger. On-tukris. U, again, ool, a lot of apples today. Ool is an apple, but the apple, or the apple, on-tool. On-tool. And then finally, the only one in this diagram that isn't a vowel, and that is S. In certain cases, for example, TS, sa Japan, sa Japan. So you can see this here. I think this is probably the most difficult one or the weirdest one. Japan means Japan. Sa Japan means in Japan. Japan, Japan, sa Japan, in Japan. Ta shay, sa Japan. He is in Japan. Let's read this little note at the bottom here. The H prefixes can be written with or without a dash. The T prefixes must be written with a dash when confusion can occur. So, like the other ones, r-nih-heh, our father, our snake. For example, on taid, T dash ifada ad means the jealousy. On taid, T ifada ad, D means the rope. And the T prefix on S, for example, as in sa Japan, can be written with or without a dash. Okay, so I hope this wasn't too boring or confusing. I'll write out all of the pronunciation for these words. You'll notice that you're picking up more and more words. I know we haven't gotten onto full sentences in relation to grammar yet, like we did before in other themes like directions and introducing yourself, but we will be getting onto full sentences very soon and how to form them. And I think in the next class we will start to conjugate verbs using the chart, the glance card that we used before. Let's do a little review of the uru and when and where to use it and what it sounds like. So here we are, eclipsis, effects of eclipsis, or the uru. And as we can see in the first section, a voiceless stop changes to a voiced sound. If you haven't heard of the difference between voiced and unvoiced sounds, we'll get into that more in a different video, I think maybe on linguistics. But basically it means voiced is when your vocal cords are involved in the sound. One very easy way to figure out whether a letter or a sound is voiced or unvoiced is simply putting your hand on your vocal cords in your neck, and if they vibrate when you say that letter or sound, that means it is voiced. So for example, p sounds, which are unvoiced, you can see that you just use your mouth, change to b sounds, which are voiced. T sounds change to d, which is voiced, and the same with k, changing to g. There are very similar sounds. As you can see, the difference is it goes from unvoiced to voiced. And then number 2, a voiced stop becomes a nasal. If the word already starts with a voiced sound, it changes to a more nasal sound. For example, b changes to n, d to n, etc., etc. Reviewing examples of the urus again, as we can see, a vowel receives a preceding n or n sound in front of it, and eclipsis or uru is symbolized in the orthography by placing the letter of the new sound in front of the original first letter of the word. For example, piaun, pen, changes to biaun. Tianga, tongue, changes to dianga. Kiaun, head, changes to gyaun. Ban, woman, changes to man. Drim, back, changes to nrim. Gluon, knee, changes to nluon. Fragra, answer, changes to vragra. Ain, bird, changes to nain. Ihe, night, changes to nih-heh. Now let's get on to the reasons why we use the uru. First of all, after plural possessive pronouns. So the possessive pronouns that trigger eclipsis are our, which means our, bhfuil, which means your plural, and a, which means their. For example, our garja, our friends, bhfuil báistí, your children, a maud, their boat. After certain numbers, which I think we saw before in the counting video, the numbers that trigger eclipsis, the noun being in the singular, are shocked, goppel, 7 horses, ucht, nossel, 8 donkeys, ní gat, 9 cats, 10 biaun, 10 pens. Another reason to use the uru is after the preposition I. Before a vowel, in is written instead of I, n, dash. For example, I jock, in a house, in Éireann, in Ireland. Genitive plural nouns after the definite article. For example, na nossel, of the donkeys, na bhfuil, of the words. And dative singular nouns after the definite article. For example, ag an bhfear, by the man, and ar an ngran, on the tree. After certain pre-verbal particles. For example, an dagan sé gach lá, does he come every day? Colmcill must speak Lee. Where are my glasses? Changes to vowel initial words. A vowel initial word does not change if lenition is expected. For example, n-ithe, the night, which is a feminine singular nominative noun after the definite article. N-uisce, of the water. O Alban, from Scotland. Shay-nathair, grandfather. However, if neither eclipsis nor lenition is expected, an initial vowel may acquire a prothetic onset consonant. For example, on tishke, the water. Otherwise, there is a prothetic onset h, which comes only when both the following conditions are met. 1. A proclitic causes neither lenition nor eclipsis of consonants. 2. A proclitic itself ends in a vowel. Examples: ahish, her age. After possessive pronoun a, which means her. Go heron, to Ireland. After preposition go, g, which means to or towards. nih-heh, of the night. On feminine singular genitive noun after definite article. Co hard le caslan, as high as a castle. After co, which means as. go hálan, beautifully, after adverb forming particle go. And ndara háit, the second place, after an ordinal numeral.